Let's talk about AI trends. You put together a AI wealth tech map. Can you talk to me a little bit about your map?
Sure, absolutely. So
So
we're focusing on firms that are AI first. They didn't have a platform before. They're building their platform with an AI first mentality. So that's a different architecture. They're not going to have a lot of legacy technology debt that you'll find on the other side of that coin. And I think they're going to move in a very nimble way. That's been proved out with the map. I mean, we're at like 88 firms on the Wealth Tech map right now. I've got another 30 firms that are in backlog. So I do want to stress that the map, we looked at every one of the firms that are on the map. The people that are on the map are ready to be put in production with wealth management firms.
yeah, I mean, you're certainly, I think some advisors are getting introduced to AI because of the platforms they are incorporating AI capabilities. Some of it might not even be noticeable, right? Reconciliation, that's a great task for that, being able to take a look at large data sets and look for anomalies, be able to take a look at even firms using it for coding. But then you're also seeing specific point solutions around AI. One of the biggest ones has been AI note taking. Talk to me a little bit. It seems like that's the largest area of adoption for advisors. I think it's something like 70% of advisors have adopted a AI note-taking tool, and it's saving them pretty significant time, 3 to 4 hours a week, which is significant. But talk to me a little bit about some of the innovation that you're seeing around AI point solutions. Where is that innovation coming from? What are the typical things, and what should advisors be thinking about, especially when it comes to these point solutions?
So 2025 has certainly been the year of the AI note taker, right? And the reason that that's done so well is, as human beings, we're horrible at multitasking. So, Mark, if you were to tell me a number, I'm going to write that number down. And while I'm writing that number down, I'm not hearing what you're saying next.
Yeah, you're not engaged,
I'm
right?
not engaged, right? So that's why a lot of advisors had three people in their meetings. The average was three. So you'd have a lead advisor, maybe a junior advisor, and a CSA all in the meeting trying to capture notes. The good news of that is you have an ability to train some of those junior staff members to understand what to listen for and what to take notes on. The bad news to that is it's 3 person hours for each client meeting, which can be very, very expensive. And that's not just the meeting itself, right? You've got meeting preparation, you've got the meeting itself, and then you've got the notes and action items that come out of the meeting. So for all of those reasons, note takers have taken the advisory space by storm. And as you pointed out, over 70% of advisors today use an AI note taker. So that was 2025. What we're going to find in 2026 is it's going to be around document management. So we talked a moment ago about the alternative space. When you think about documents, analyzing a tax return is very easy. It's structured. There's no variability on a tax return. It's a 1040, right? And it's very easy to use a 1040 and all of the schedules to be able to analyze the tax return. When you start thinking about, let's say, wills as a good example,
Yeah.
well, there's 6 different software out there, 6 different software packages that your attorney may use to create your will. And they always have some secret sauce that they wind up putting in, an extra clause or an extra change that they put into the will, at an attorney level, right? So that's their secret sauce at the attorney level. So what happens is, even though you may know the 6 formats for the 6 different softwares that wills can be generated from, you can't really just rely on that. It's not standardized. Now take into effect, you've got wills, trusts, estate plans, you've got alternative investment
Yeah,
documentation, you have
subscription
limited
agreements and stuff,
partnerships.
right?
All of that documentation is not standardized. So what we're going to see in 2026 are this huge growth in the number of tools that ingest these documents, analyze them, and then use APIs, application programming interfaces, to push data into various places. That may push data, for example, into your CRM. That may push data into a financial planning tool. So what are we going to see from the financial planning firms? Well, some of those financial planning firms are not API first, right? They're going to have to evolve really quickly to develop APIs or they're going to lose market share. That's very straightforward. Most of the CRMs have a vibrant API built around them. Some of the wealth specific ones lack some APIs. They're going to have to come up to speed quickly or they'll lose market share. Why? Because the consumer, the financial advisor, is going to demand that their document ingestion capability can push data into these other places to avoid the swivel chair, right? Like I've looked at it over here in my document ingestion stuff, and now I'm going to turn over here and cut and paste it into my CRM. No advisor is going to want that. That technology genie is out of the bag now. With the integrations that we're seeing between note takers and CRMs, that technology genie's out of the bag. No advisor is going to want to go back to swivel chair when they start dealing with these document ingestion capability. So 2025, year of the note taker. 2026, year of the document ingestion. 2027, for mid-sized firms, it's going to be the year of agents. For large firms, we're already seeing them roll out agents today. I think you'll see them roll out more agents in 2026. And in 2027, the largest firms will be in the world of digital workers, which is where you take a variety of agents and string them together. So think of an example where an agent reads a document, it interrogates the document and pulls out the first agent brings the document in and reads it. Second agent pulls out all the great bits. Third agent pushes it off to all the individual software packages that need the data. When you string all that together, those three agents, you have a digital worker. Then what happens is you just upload the document, and the next thing you know, it's all sitting in your CRM or your financial planning tool. You're going to see the largest firms implement that in 26 and 27. You're going to see smaller, mid-sized firms implementing agents in 27, and then in 28, you'll see them moving to digital workers. Simply because the largest firms can spend the money on that development right now. Those development costs will come down as these agents and digital workers become more readily available, and then mid-sized firms and smaller firms will have access to it.
Yeah, agentic AI is definitely the next wave, and obviously, I think there's in wealth management been a talent constrained resource, been the number one issue, or has been about attracting, retaining talent, which is certainly going to help. And the beauty about agents too is they don't forget, they don't get sick. They they got to complete that task, and I'll let you know that they can complete the task. I do wonder, when you start with the AI and these AI point solutions, are we going to end up repeating the past, where we're going to end up with a bunch of siloed AI solutions, or is it this API connectivity that's going to be able to prevent us from repeating that past? Where do you see that? Do you see that as a likely scenario that we'll end up kind of repeating the past with a bunch of AI solutions that don't talk to each other, or what do you see?
I think you're going to see initially a bunch of AI solutions that don't talk to one another. If we look at every technology innovation that's happened, go all the way back to, Tim Berners-Lee in creating the World Wide Web, right? We had websites that didn't talk to one another initially. So whenever a new technology comes out, it's going to innovate really quickly within stovepipes. And then
Yeah.
we'll break down those barriers with middleware and integration. And then eventually we'll get to a point where it's more of a seamless architecture. And I think you're going to see that exact same thing with AI. There are so many firms that are trying to move quickly around AI. I think I mentioned a moment ago, I'm seeing enterprise firms that are already rolling out agents, right? Those agents are being rolled out for point solutions. They're not talking to one another at this point. It's not going to be until they start really worrying about digital workers and data supply chains that you're going to see these things become integrated and come across the data supply chain. Um, so no, I think initially we are going to see a lot of point solutions. We're going to see integration headaches, and then we're going to get to a point where we have better digital supply chains and data supply chains that'll bring that stuff together. Now, can you avoid some of that? Yes, you can. For example, I've been writing a lot about business process management within the wealth management space, right? So do not build, for example, your workflows in a closed solution. Unfortunately, Salesforce is a closed solution. If I build a workflow there, it's difficult for me to call out to other solutions using Salesforce, right? You've got to have a programming team to be able to do that, and they've got to really know what they're doing. So building workflows that are in open source or transparent, that are separate from your point solutions, also gives you portability. We spoke earlier about having a data lake and owning your data gives you the
Yep.
ability to change vendors without a lot of pain and suffering, or lower amounts of pain and suffering, lower cost. The same thing happens with your workflows. If your workflows are built in a closed solution and you decide to change, guess what you're going to do? Rebuild all those workflows again, right? So you're spending the money twice. It'd be better for you to really examine your workflow architecture and say, let me use more of a business process management capability, which has been around for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
That capability, if you talk to a manufacturing company or a large financial services company, they're running everything on a BPM platform. In wealth management, for one reason or another, we have not embraced this technology. And we should, because it will give people portability of their workflows. So I think that's incredibly important. And I think as you build digital agents, as you build AI agents, those agents can attach to your external workflow, which will reduce that pain and suffering of trying to integrate all this stuff later. So I do think a thoughtful approach to your workflow management and what you're creating around digital workers and around AI agents is going to save you a ton of time and money in the future. But there'll be firms that just move fast and loose and implement it and then worry about the integration later.
Right. So you're talking about BPN software that sits over all these different applications that can have workflows that go across. Like you said, this manufacturing, lots of other different industries that have embraced that. So this is what you're recommending or seeing as a way to kind of get past this siloed approach.
Absolutely. It's a way to get past the siloed approach and it will save you money in the long term, a lot of money in the long term.
Let's talk about AI adoption. Obviously, I think there's beyond the note takers. Like I think firms are struggling a little bit. They don't necessarily know how to adopt AI software or may have tried and didn't get necessarily results that they want. I think it's obviously there's multiple aspects to it too. Like how do you protect client privacy? How do you stay in compliance? But also how do you be able to bring in AI capabilities as a firm that actually really make a difference and an impact? So talk to me a little bit about how do you see firms should think about adopting AI and what steps should they take?
I think the first is we lack a regulatory framework today around AI. We're seeing regulatory frameworks emerge, for example, in Australia and Europe, but in the United States, we still are lacking a regulatory framework. So think about this if you've been a CCO for a long time, many times when you go through an exam, one of the things that a regulator wants to see, whether it's the OCC or FINRA or the SEC, one of the things they want to see is what's your process? Show me your documented process. Show me how you've educated your team to follow that process, and show me how you've measured their ability to follow that process. So that's fairly straightforward. We've wrestled with that regulatory framework, if you will, for decades. So AI is no different. You should start with an AI acceptable use policy, right? So what AI are we going to allow people to use? How do we teach them to protect PII when using that AI? Right? And what are some of the acceptable use cases that we want them to do? For example, you may say, hey, researching companies, researching investments, no problem. Creating an investment strategy, that's a problem. We don't want you doing that yet. That should be in your AI acceptable use policy. These are the use cases that are inbounds. These are the use cases that are out of bounds. If you get that down on a piece of paper and educate your team, you're already about 50% of the way there of being able to have a compliance blanket, right? So you've got your processes written in your AI acceptable use policy. You've got some guardrails there to protect the firm, the PII, and your team, and you've educated them on it. Then what you need to do is now's where technology steps in. Now you get technology to say, this is what we're going to deploy on your machine, and these are the things we're going to block on your machine. So for example, if you are allowing someone to use ChatGPT and you don't want them using Copilot, you can block Copilot using Microsoft Active Directory, and you can enable ChatGPT. That's where technology comes into play. From a compliance perspective, the chief compliance officer and your chief technology officer should be partners in that piece of it. But I would start with an AI acceptable use policy, educate the team on it, come up with use cases that you really want to implement, put some ROI around those use cases. Like
Yeah.
note takers was easy. I have 3 people in a meeting, now I only have one. You can measure that pretty quickly. When you start thinking about agents or other uses of AI, it's less obvious, right? So you've got to establish some baselines. Let's take that investment research for a moment. If you had a research analyst that worked on researching something for 4 hours, and then that went to a senior analyst to approve that research or sign off on it, That junior research analyst may be able to do this in 30 minutes using AI instead of 4 hours. But you've got to know that it took them 4 hours in the first place. Otherwise, it's hard to measure that ROI,
Right.
right? So snap a chalk line, understand what your current manpower is or person power is, and then use that use case with the ROI to determine whether or not you're generating success.
I mean, that sounds like great advice for any technology project, right? You really need to understand your total cost of ownership, or else how would you know you're successful with it with a future endeavor, right? If you didn't know really how long it took you and what the total cost was of doing certain things, then how do you know if you save money, or how do you know if you're in a better state? It's just this kind of gut feeling, right? So,
Yep. And the gut